Hey everyone, my name's Adam Archer, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Strike Force Auto. This is somewhat of a unique knife, as I've not seen any videos on it or really it ever being mentioned online. I picked this up in a lot of knives. I think I purchased like 18 switchblades all at once about a year ago, and this was one of the knives in it. It, as I mentioned before, is the Strike Force Auto, produced by KO Tactical, which is a company owned by Knives of Alaska. Knives of Alaska is a Texas-based company, surprisingly, rather than a Alaskan-based one. I do not know if Knives of Alaska is a company that hires other knife companies to produce their knives and they sell it under the Knives of Alaska name, or if they do produce their own. I have not been able to find that information out. But let's take a look at this knife. It does have some interesting and unique features that puts this knife apart from some of the other average automatic knives. Some good, some bad. You'll have to decide on your own. This is an older version of the knife. They have produced or updated a newer version. The newer version has less holes on the front here, and it actually features a safety. I don't think this really needs a safety. A safety is always nice because you can normally select if you want to use a safety or not. They're normally not forced. But this does have a recessed button, so you don't really have to worry too much about this knife going off, unless you keep it in maybe a bag or something like that. Normally when it's in your pocket, you don't have too much of a chance to press that button. One of the things that could make this knife possibly go off in your pocket, it is a right hand or left hand, so you can actually reverse that pocket clip, throw it on this side, and when that is facing like on the outside of your jeans, I could see that possibly being pressed. But when that's against your leg, right hand carry, no real chance, honestly. So let's open up this knife. It uses somewhat of a unique feature, as in it actually is a torsion bar rather than a spring that releases this knife. On most modern tactical knives, you're going to see spring releases coil spring releases rather than using a torsion bar. So that's something unique about this knife. It does mean, though, if the knife does not deploy all the way, you're going to either have to open that up manually or close the blade and have the spring again. Because the spring does stop right here, it's really just the force from that initial impact that would open this knife the remainder of the way. Going back to the handle, this is a G10 handle without a peel ply finish. A peel ply finish is kind of what is on like an Emerson, where you get that very rough texture. On this, it has more of a rocky finish. I don't know if that's probably not the official name, but when I think of Tops knives, they do have what they call the rocky finish, which is this more texturized, where it gives you still a good grip. It is G10, as I mentioned before, with, I don't know if that's a titanium or a stainless steel pocket. It does not have any liners in it, other than, of course, that back spring. And that back spacer works as the torsion bar as well. As you can see that. Let's close this knife up. And that back spring is both the spacer as well as the spring. This knife does not have very many screws on it either. You can see that it has the pivot and then the 2 screws that go into the pocket clip as well as that spring. So it just has those 3 springs, or those 3 screws holding the knife together. Opening this up, it has a very nice action and releases that blade. Blade length on this is probably 3.2 or somewhere between 3 and 3.5 inches. Yeah, so 3 1/4. If you go to all the way on the base, actual cutting length is going to be 3 inches. So it is a little bit on the smaller side in terms of the autos that I'd like to carry. But I actually just keep this in my display case rather than carrying it. One thing that's somewhat interesting is this features a D2 tool steel rather than a stainless steel or a carbon steel. It uses a semi-stainless, and it is made in the USA. You can see D2 tool steel, and Knives of Alaska do use D2 on most of their products. They produce a lot of hunting and that type of style, hunting and camping style knives, which D2 is fantastic for. I'm guessing they're trying to keep that same market with this particular knife. And they probably, if they're producing all their knives with the same steel, they probably are pretty good at heat treating and that type of stuff. I know a lot of companies start going with some super steels on uncommon knives, and maybe they don't know how to heat treat those super steels properly. So there's not too much else to discuss about this knife. It does have some jimping on the top. The handle grip is pretty comfortable. And there you go. One of the things that I do like to mention, though, when I discuss knives with torsion bars, is the fact that it is much harder to fix these than it would be with a coil spring. With a coil spring, you can literally just go online, buy a set of coil springs, and disassemble the knife, throw the new coil spring in, and you're good to go. With torsion bars, when they break, they normally break in the center, which results in a few things happening. It normally hits the edge of your blade. So, first of all, I want to mention, though, that I'm not saying this has happened or will happen with your strike force knife, but this is a concern with torsion bars. They tend to break in the center and hit the edge of your blade. So that's the first thing. It hits the edge of your blade and ends up leaving a dent. Well, if you're out somewhere and that's broken halfway, you have a few options. You either leave the knife open, like in the open position, and then you don't really want to close it, or you force that knife to be pushed up against that piece of metal that's wanting to bend, and you're going to shove that spring right against the edge of the blade, versus with a knife with a coil spring. If that coil spring breaks, you just have a manual action knife. You can open and close it still. It's just not going to have that spring action. With this, you're going to have a broken spring rubbing up against the blade. That's one of the risks. I absolutely love a lot of my knives with torsion bars, but it is a risk. One of my rarest knives, a Benchmade NTK. It was Benchmade's version of the Lone Wolf D2. There's probably like 20 of them in existence, maybe 30. They were dealer specials, or they were sent to dealers. That knife, the spring broke, hit the blade. Thankfully, I was able to talk to a person at Benchmade, and they, I believe they may have swapped out the blade. But still, that's a risk that you take with torsion bars. Whew, I think we're good there. It does appear to have some heat treating color on that torsion bar, but there's really nothing else to talk about with this knife. I think it's cool. I'm glad to have it in my collection. The price on these, I think I saw them around $150, well, $120 to $150. So not on the super expensive side when it comes to automatics, but isn't a cheap knife either. I don't know if you can get this version. I think you're probably going to end up getting one of them with the safety and possibly micarta rather than G10. But there you go. Did that knife not open all the way? No, it's good. Ooh, interesting. It actually bounced off the spine, or it bounced off the lock pin and didn't lock in the open position. Interesting. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this knife, and have a great day.